Okay. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. It is such a pleasure to have you all here, and I feel so honored to be here with these three incredibly inspiring and accomplished women. As you may know, Julianne and Ellen published their novel, Everything We Never Knew, this week. Came out on Tuesday. It's fantastic. I can't wait for you all to read it. This captivating novel follows the story of a successful young realtor who embarks on a journey of self-discovery after learning that she can feel others' emotions, energy, and even see into their personal memories. It was such a treat for me to read this book alongside Kendra's 2022 memoir, Born to Shine, which recounts her life lessons and her entrepreneurial journey to create her billion-dollar company. So while these books are fundamentally different in genre, there are so many overlaps in theme that I think a lot of people can relate to. Some things include self-discovery, pursuing one's passions, challenging societal norms, finding strength and vulnerability, and perhaps most importantly, living an authentic life. So those are the themes we're gonna focus on today. Which brings me to my first question for the group.
Can I just say hi, everybody? I just want to say hi. This is so exciting. And first of all, thank you so much, Hannah and Kendra and Book People and Ellen. I'm just beyond grateful from this week, and I just wanted to say hello before we started.
We're so lucky to have you here. So when you all began writing your respective books, what were your primary goals? Were the themes that I mentioned part of your original vision, or did they emerge organically?
Let y'all go first. I guess I'll start. I think for me, the reason this book came to fruition was because of my own transformation and self-discovery journey. I went through probably about 6 years ago, and for me, anytime I share anything that I feel like I've gone through, it's because I just want people to experience the magnitude of what is possible. And it's sometimes to be known that you share things, but also so that you can pay it forward of something that worked for you. You want other people to be able to experience what kind of expanse that could look like. So I went through my own journey, and you know, I could have told my own story and done a memoir, and I think maybe one day I will. But I know for me, fiction has always been a sense and a source for me to see myself in another story and get lost and captivated. And these universal themes that we go through in life, they don't have to be linear in my own personal circumstance. We all experience a lot of these same, you know, emotions or themes like Lexi goes through in this book. And obviously a lot of my experience went into this. But the goal was really so that other people could feel seen and known and valued and worthy, and that they could start beginning to trust themselves by seeing it through another character and their journey.
Yeah, I love that, because I love fiction, and obviously mine is a real story. But 2020 was the worst year for me in a lot of ways, besides the fact that it was a bad year for a lot of us with the pandemic. But I was going through a lot of personal things in my own life, health issues. I almost lost my father. It was like I kept saying it can't get any worse, and then it would. It just got worse. And at that time, though, I'm reading magazines about me being on the Forbes list and all these things, and this persona of Kendra Scott wasn't real. And I felt like I want people to know how I'm really feeling. And I want them, if there's one person that could read my book in a time where they feel like they're almost wearing a mask and no one is really able to see what's really happening, that if I can be vulnerable, if I can be honest and raw and real, that maybe that will allow others to feel like they can do that too. And that really inspired me to put the stories around my life, because it has been a lot of peaks, but there have been a lot of valleys. And sharing the valleys, I think, is so important. And I love that about the character in Lexi. And I think, like, when we started talking, we became fast friends the minute we met. And it was like kismet, of just so many parallels and how we think about things, and also how we just show up in a very real and honest way. So I think both of these books really share a lot of those elements.
I'm going to add to the fact that you're basically talking about what book 2 is. Because this is like the activation of what's possible, but then the unraveling happens, which is what you were just talking about, which is like all these amazing things can start happening, but then the unraveling when you're not, when you start getting more aligned with who you are, the things that aren't start unraveling, and that's that hard time. And from the outside it can look very shiny and beautiful and all these things are happening. We're wearing fancy ass clothes and all the things, you know, but like at the core, like that's the second book. And then when the third book comes out, we're getting ahead of ourselves.
I love how she is. She's like, I'm here at my book release, but I'm already on to book 2 and 3. Because Julianne, she can't just be like, hey guys, here's my book. All right, I'm going to talk about my whole series, because that's your brain. And
It's
I love
my
it.
brain.
Yes.
Because it's a journey and it doesn't just stop, you know. But
Awesome.
but the point is,
That's why we're friends.
yeah. But the point is, it's a journey. It starts with activation. It goes into like the vulnerability, and that's what this is about, sharing. And then it goes into creation, what you get to do next. So sorry, I didn't want to cut you off. But
No.
yeah.
But I think it's so interesting you were talking about working on the memoir and being vulnerable, because I think that's what we were trying to do with this book as well. And that's something I really love about fiction, is that it kind of gives you this space to say things more truly sometimes than you might otherwise, you know, because when you're, I don't know about your memoir, but when you're working on it, sometimes if you're talking about like friends or family, it can feel like you're stepping on toes, but it's so important to be able to tell your own story and like hold true to your voice in spite of that. So yeah, I think that was kind of what we were aiming for in this one.
Well, speaking of being true to yourself, living an authentic life, as I mentioned, plays such an important role in both of your books. So I'm curious to know how each of you define what it means to live an authentic life, and if there are any practices or strategies that you use to ensure that you show up as your most genuine and authentic self each day.
I'll take this one first. Then we'll just switch around here. I think for me, I really got to a point where, my life for many years, I always felt like I wasn't good enough. People wouldn't think I was smart enough. I wasn't a fashion brand out of LA or New York. I was coming out of Texas. No one would take me seriously. I had all these like voices in my head constantly telling me I wasn't enough. And it took so long to get to a place, I think, of going and being embarrassed to say I'm a college dropout. I'm all these things, right? And people would say, where did you graduate from? And I remember just feeling like, oh my God, here we go again. I have to explain, like, I'm a college dropout and why I dropped out. And I started my first business at 19. And I used to just dread some of these questions. And then I got to a point where I owned it. And I was like, you know what? I have a master's degree in the School of Hard Knocks. I dropped out of school, but I started a company at 19. I've done these things. I was a single mother, and I started to own it and be like, this is who I am. This is what makes me me. This is what makes me resilient and a fighter and strong. And instead of being embarrassed or ashamed, I'm going to be proud of who I am. And I think for all of us, sometimes it's the things in our life that we think are mistakes or flaws or this or that, but that makes us unique. That makes us us. There is no one on this planet that is you. And so instead of us trying to be something we're not, showing up as you is the best thing you can ever do. And when I started doing it, it was amazing how things around me changed, how I gained more respect. It was like the opposite. I would be in a room of, master's degrees, Stanford graduates, Harvard grads, and the minute I just stood up and said, this is who I am, they were like, holy cow, you're impressive. Instead of me trying to be something I wasn't. And I just think the more all of us can go who we are, the things that have happened in our life, that is our story. We own that and no one else does. And be proud of it. Be proud of the things in your life, even that were hard. And I think that's it. And being vulnerable, because when you show vulnerability, when you can start to be honest, it was so funny. I was in a group of all of these really smart master degree people, and they're all boasting about their degrees and their this and the that. And then I got up and I said, well, I'm a dropout and was a single mom. And they all were like, oh my God, all of a sudden gave them the opportunity to be like, well, actually my business isn't doing as good as I wanted to say it was doing. And and all of a sudden we started having real conversations. And all of a sudden all those other things were torn down. And I think, that's the one lesson I learned, and it took me a long time to understand that. But once I did, it was just like, wow, I just get to show up and be me. I don't have to show up and be anybody else but me. And that's a beautiful thing to be. So beautiful.
So beautiful. Do you want to go?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's kind of a funny topic for me, I guess, because my day job is a ghostwriter. So I sort of pretend to be other people for a living at times. But that was what made this project so special, I feel like, because we initially, when we started talking, I kind of assumed it was going to be a ghostwriting project, and then Jules was like, you know, I can have you on the cover. Like, I don't need people to think I wrote this by myself, which was a really cool suggestion, and it just made it feel so much more like also my project, in a way that, you know, straight ghostwriting normally doesn't feel like it belongs to me in a way. So yeah, and that was really exciting. And then I think the hardest part probably about having my name on the cover is that vulnerability, because you know, when I'm ghosting, I can kind of hide behind whoever else is on the cover, but this time it's like, oh, people know that I was involved here, and people are gonna see like the pieces of me that I put into the story. So that's like scary, but also exciting at the same time.
I love that. Well, to go along with what you were saying, Kendra, like owning the parts of you that make you resilient and strong and all of those things, but also owning your wounds. I think that's a big one too. And I think over the years, you know, I tried to own that I was a fighter, and like I've done so many things to like survive in this world, and I was, you know, 9 years old when I left home and lived on my own, and I trained, and I was the youngest and the only American to ever win the world championship, and like all these things that I achieved that made me feel like I was worthy and I was successful and I did it on my own. And you know, even moving to LA at 17 and getting on Dancing with the Stars. But the truth is, I was completely avoiding my wounds. I was just all action and all just forward momentum. I didn't want to own the parts of me that were actually going to be painful. And what I realized was a lot of the charge was like an F you attitude, watch me. And that is not sustainable, because that is for everyone else, that I have given the power still to everyone else, because my motivation is to prove myself to them. And so the minute I owned and accepted my wound of belonging, needing to feel worthy, needing to not feeling loved, not feeling accepted, rejected, like all these things that like lived inside of me that I just did not want to feel, all of a sudden the charge turned into something else, and I had to find my motivation again, and that was really hard, because my charge and my motivation came from proving myself to everybody else that told me I couldn't, which got me really far. I mean, I literally built my career off of being like, watch me. And like, that's a really powerful thing, but again, not sustainable, because they still have the power. So when I started owning my wounds, which Lexi starts to acknowledge in this book, which she did not want to face at all, because she was, you know, she's the top realtor, she's winning all these awards, she got a perfect marriage, perfect house, perfect life, all these things, but underneath and in the background, there's these little things looming. The minute she starts owning them, the minute I started owning them, I mean, I started falling in love with myself, because you can't love parts of yourself. You have to love all of yourself. And those wounds are the parts that actually become your superpower, because you can see other people, you can have compassion, and not just compassion to feel for people, but actual empathy, because I get it. I feel that way. And so living into my authenticity has been a journey, and it's going to continue to be a journey. But I think the idea of like, there are tools so that you can find those layers of protection that we put in place for ourselves to keep us feeling like we've got our shit together. Sorry, excuse me if there are children in here. You know, like we don't, none of us have it together. None of us have it together. And just when you think you do, something else comes up, you know? And so just owning all parts is so valuable. And the tools that Lexi goes through are tools that I use, which are trusting your inner wisdom. And how do you do that? Everybody is unique in how they experience their own trust, but I will say that I've tried many different modalities. Kinergy, obviously my company, is one that I really put a lot of focus on to help people connect to that inner wisdom, inner trust, inner knowing. And that's what's in this book too, is using the elements to connect to, you know, like earth, fire, water, and air. We are nature, right? We are made up of the elements. We're basically all water. And so by moving our bodies and getting our energy flowing, by quieting our mind and getting into like a meditative state and visualizing about the elements and how they move through your body, those all like carry wisdom. And we all know, we're just inundated with what society says, what our environment has told us, how we were raised, traumas that have happened along the way that you have to like become more layers of protection. So you get further and further and further away from yourself as you're growing up. And life is literally about unlearning everything that you learned. It really is. And to come back to what you already know. And those tools that Lexi goes through that is within Kinergy, those are the ways that I found a lot of ease to find that inner wisdom. But everybody's unique and different. Like you were saying, Kendra, like you might find it through running. You might find it through pickleball. We were talking about pickleball.
I love pickleball.
You know? But whatever the thing is for you that you just are like, man, I am in my zone of genius and I feel so connected to myself. Like get curious about that. Yeah.
I have so many questions I want to ask you guys, but we're already running out of
I'm
time.
sorry, we talk and we love
I
to
love
talk.
it. You have such great answers. I feel like I should be taking notes. So Julianne and Kendra, you both are obviously known for your careers outside of writing, so I'm curious to know how writing a book, how that process was unique for you all, and then after you answer, Ellen, I'd love to hear from you, since writing is your primary career, what it was like to write as a co-author rather than to write on your own.
Yeah, I mean, I was, first of all, the idea of doing it was like very intimidating, but I had written in a journal for a long time, and I wanted to remember a lot of the things that had happened in my life, so I just could capture those moments. And as I was reading back, a lot of them weren't good, because I did want to remember how I felt in those moments. Like I wanted to remember what this felt like. Because I think sometimes, you know, you get past things in life and you kind of like downplay it or whatever. And so for me, I'm a storyteller, and the best way that I could do it was tell the story, and thank God there's software now that you can talk, and then it turns it into text. If I had to sit there and type the words, like it would have never happened for me, but I could tell the story, and then I could go back and kind of reread it and start to edit it. And it was really a really exciting process. I worked with really great editors at Worthy, and as I would send them things, some things I was just sending them like were notes, and then some of my journal entries, and you know, all these things. And I remember I sent them one thing, and she's like, "Oh my God, Kendra, I just got this. I love this." I was like, "Oh no, I didn't mean to send that. We're not putting that in the book." And she's like, "No, I think it needs to be chapter 1." And I was like, oh God, because it was so like, it was a thing that I wasn't really sharing with everybody. It is chapter 1 in the book, so now you're all curious. And to get the book. Did you see what I did there? But it was really an interesting process, and it was so cathartic. We were spending so much time at home, and I had a lot of time, and I was going through a lot of things and writing and thinking about my life and thinking about all these things that have happened. Even the worst things happened in my life for a real reason. I know sometimes you hear that and it's like all things happen for a reason. In the moment you're like, yeah, right, what could this possibly be? But when I looked in the rear view mirror, I could see that the bridge to that thing happening, that was the bridge to get me to the next place in my life that I was going. And if I didn't have that first business that failed, if I didn't lose my stepfather to cancer, I mean, all these things that were so hard that I could never get an answer for why these had to happen, I started to realize no matter what, there was something, there was never a reason why these things happened, but at least I had motivation and a purpose that caused me to become the person I am today and do the things that I'm doing within my life. And it was exciting to kind of put that down in paper, and very scary to put it out into the world because it was so raw and very vulnerable. But I loved when I started to get the messages of people reading it and connecting with it and feeling like, oh my God, I needed to hear this. I needed to read this. I needed to see these words. I would just like bawl because I really did. I was like, if one person gets something out of this, then will feel good about it. And to see like thousands of people loving it is beyond anything I could have ever dreamt for sure.
So amazing.
So inspiring.
So amazing. So I'm a storyteller as well, whether it's through my body and dancing or doing movies or, hosting, whatever it is, I'm a storyteller. And I think with this project specifically, I recognize that I'm a high concept person. I'm more like visionary. Even when I work with my brother, I don't know if you guys know my brother Derek, but like he's a very like get into the weeds detailed person, and I'm a like let's pull you out before you get stuck down there and like see the high concept and the big picture and bring some levity to it. So even when I'm building my businesses or creating a character, whatever it is, I'm more high concept, like create a world, create like the experiences and the general themes of things. And so working with Ellen was so important because, speaking of elements, I am very much air, fire, water, and I don't have a lot of earth in my constitution. And so what is, earth? It's like structure, it is like actual, creating of the details and timelines and goals of executing, like making sure deadlines are there. And that is why it took 4.5 years, because I am much more over here of like what's possible versus the actual structure. So for me, it was like I wanted to create the world, and I would send Ellen visuals of the energetic fields, and I walk her through it, and then like I would send her pictures of the elements and like the downward spiral and the upward spiral, and I was like, are you getting any of this? In fact, she came and did a Kinergy class because it was so important for her to experience like what the transformation is and the hero's journey within the arc of the class, because that's what she goes through. And so yeah, I'm visual. I will talk for days, clearly. And I can create a world, but the actual structure of like creating the details, I mean, Ellen is a genius, and I'm so grateful for her. So, yeah.
I will say taking the Kinergy class in front of a professional dancer to try out for writing a book was a little nerve-wracking. I was like, this is not on my resume. I don't know about this. But yeah, it was great working together, and I think so as a writer, when I'm working on my own stuff, you're just kind of alone in your room for years at a time. So it's really fun when you're collaborating because you have someone else who's equally invested in the book turning out well and working as a whole. So it's really nice to be able to have another brain to bounce ideas off of, and I feel like we balanced each other really well because I do have a very like logic, structure brain in terms of telling stories and like character arcs and that kind of thing. So,
and I'll geek out for one more second. So when I was talking about the energetic fields, so this is like more high concept stuff that when you get into Kinergy, we like dive into the educational stuff, and like the science of it all. But we all have abilities when like you either are very motivated by self or with others. And so I am not a self-motivated person. Like I can do it by like, I need to work out, I need to do things that will activate my life force energy so that I can be self-motivated. But when I'm with people, when I'm in collaboration, whoa, like I will create like nobody's business, but try to get me to like answer emails by myself, whoa, good luck.
so we're gonna open it up for audience questions here in a moment, but before we do that, Julianne, is there anything you wanna say about the book that you haven't yet, or what's kind of the main thing you want people to take away from this book?
Thank you for asking that. You know, I think the main thing is, my hope is that when people read this book, they are going to dive into a world, and whatever season of life you are in, it's going to match wherever you are. I don't think you need to dive in being like, okay, this was like a self-discovery book through fiction, I must get something from it. I think it will match you wherever it is, but the encoded energy that has been poured into this book is for people to trust themselves, to have courage, to be brave, that choosing yourself in a moment when you've given your power to so many people or so many environments or your work or whatever it is, that it always starts with self, others, world. If you can connect to yourself and truly own and accept who you are and fall in love with who you are, your life will start opening up to the point where you can see the people around you with clear eyes. And we can like actually see each other for who each other are. And I think, not to get super out there, but we're in a very, divisive time, and like to see people and have different belief systems and still love each other and still be able to honor and respect one another is very different that we're experiencing. And so that comes though from trusting yourself and who you are, that you can open your eyes to see other people. And when that can happen, you can then step into the world and contribute in a very integral, beautiful way. And that is, Lexi's journey of finding her voice, knowing what she believes in, not what she's been told, not what she's been taught, but what she truly believes. And sometimes that's scary, because the things that you know, everything we never knew, is already within you. But until you go on that journey to figure out what you believe, you're living in a box like this, and then it starts expanding. And as beautiful as it is, as it starts expanding this way, it also expands this way. And you start seeing things and questioning things, but man, do you have discernment for the first time. And like having your own discernment is like so empowering and scary at the same time. But on the other side of fear, as you were saying, it like
something great is waiting.
Something great is waiting. And a whole world of possibility opens up. And so again, this is not a memoir like yours, but it is for you to see yourself, to recognize what's possible, to have the courage, and do it in a way that's like also just a fun adventure. Like this is Ellen and I, like, I feel like if I could toot my own horn, we created a really fun visual experience for people to go on a fun epic journey too. It's entertainment. That's how we receive information. Oh, actually, wait, I do have other things. So the other things about it, as I said, epic journey and entertainment, I realized that people receive information in different ways. So obviously, you're going to read this book, or you can listen to it, because I did the narration of it with my voice. But then I also, I wrote music for it. And there's a whole like soundtrack basically. So there's a theme song that's called Everything We Never Knew that's out right now. That's sort of like the trailer.
I wanted a Born to Shine theme song, and my team laughed at me. I was like, can't you hear it already? Like, Born to Shine. And they said no.
Well, it's never too late. So there's a theme song called Everything We Never Knew. And then every lesson that Lexi goes through, she goes through an air, a fire, a water, and an earth lesson. I wrote one for each one of those lessons as well. And those will come out in like a few weeks. So there's that. And then in the back of the book, there's actually a QR code before you get to the reader's guide. And you can actually take your elemental constitution quiz. So
I was going to ask what I was, because I have no idea.
You can take the quiz.
Do you know? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I feel like you have a lot of air and fire. And meaning air is all about communication and magnetism and like just the performer, right? And then the fire is the resilience and the energy to move forward. The water is the dreamer, the creativity, the sensuality, the emotions. And earth is the structure, it's the foundation, it is the stability.
You cut out earth for a reason, and I agree
Yeah.
with that.
But I think, with this Constitution quiz, when you can, knowledge is power, right? So if you can actually figure out where your strengths are and where you're not, like you can do things to build that earth. I do things to build that earth. I put people in my life that have a lot of earth around me, so that, whether it's other people or how I cultivate it myself, again, knowledge is power. Also, I'm just gonna pitch Kinergy because that's all what Kinergy is. And this is Rebecca, by the way, who lives here in Austin, and she's one of our Kinergy guides. So if you ever want to take a class, she is here in Austin, and you can also move your body and experience what Lexi goes through by moving her body and visualizing and breath work and all that. That's actually in real life. You can do that too. So there's all these different mediums of how people can receive the message that is encoded in this book, which is how to trust yourself even more and to connect back to your most authentic version of yourself and create the life that you really want. So there you go.
I love that so much.
You're
great at pitching the book. So we have time for a couple audience questions before Julianne's going to close us out with a meditation. So does anybody have a question they want to ask?
You mentioned that we spend most of our lives unlearning. What has been the most rewarding thing for you to unlearn?
So the question was, we spend most of our lives unlearning. What has been the most important thing for you to unlearn?
I think it's been a combination of things, because kind of what I said before, which was I had this system or this belief that I had to do everything on my own and watch me, and I think I had to unlearn the fact that I don't have to prove myself to anybody. When I am the most free and self-expressed, people are going to see me, and I don't have to perform to be loved. And I am good enough, if not amazing, for exactly who I am. And so unlearning that and delayering that gave me so much freedom in loving myself. Yeah.
In the back.
Hi Julianne, I'm Paolo. Great meeting you. I wanted your perspective on two things. So a few months ago, I was listening to Val Schmarkovsky's book, and he talks about how he asked you to be his dance partner, and then at the end, that didn't happen. So I just wanted to hear your side of the story. How'd you turn that around? Maybe turn it into something positive. And secondly, why, for instance, in the show, when you're doing, for instance, a salsa routine, they're playing like a pop song or something that is not
Authentic.
Authentic. Maybe has to do with music, right? But anyway, again, I wanted to know.
Yeah, I'll start with that one. I think it's a very good question, because I think, one, music rights for sure, but two, I think people want what's familiar and are afraid to open up their minds to curiosity to learn more. And I'm with you. Let's do the authenticity, right? Let's open up so we can learn more about other cultures and actually dive into that. So I think people go with what's familiar because they know it's going to work, and that's the fear that we all live in, right? Let's just do the thing that we know is going to work, instead of trusting that actually this is going to open up a whole new world. So I'm with you on that. Sometimes pop songs are fun to dance to, though. And the second thing, Val and I were going to dance together. When I was 15, I moved back home from London when I was dancing with Mark Ballas. And at that time, I had an opportunity to go and dance with Val, or I had an opportunity to go and be raised by my family. And I chose that because I needed to be with my family. I had been raised by another family. My whole life was about dedication and working, and I did what I needed to do, but I wanted to be with my parents. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We have time for one more if anybody has a question about the book.
right here.
Okay, on those lines, Tracy from Alta says hi.
Oh my goodness.
I trained her, and
Wow.
so I guess I don't know that much about you, but I've just adored you from afar. So you went home to be with your family, and how did that help you heal or move forward and where you are today?
Well, thank you for asking, and I love Tracy. She gave me a shot to be on the dance company at Alta High School when I was late to audition for the company, and because she gave me that opportunity, I had friends, and they were my community, and I don't know what I would have done without that group of friends. So I'm so grateful to Tracy for giving me that shot. I think it's what I was talking about with spirals. Like, there are different layers. So that layer at 15, when I went back to, be with my family, I only knew what I knew then. And I only had the maturity that I had at that time to, at 15, I wasn't really being like, I need to heal my relationship with my parents. But I did what I needed to do at that time, and there was some really great, valuable lessons. And then I will say that when I got divorced, that's when I really healed my relationship with my parents, because it was a time when I was the most raw and vulnerable I've ever been in my life, and the only people actually that really could be there for me at that time were my parents. And I got to be a kid again, where I had been an adult at 9 and been an adult my whole life, and then I got to be the kid again, and it was very uncomfortable, but so needed. So what I was saying too about like these spirals and these layers, like we're gonna do this over and over again so many times in our life, but it's the stage and the season that we're in, and we just get more open and more open the more curious we get and the older we get. And so, sorry, I'm going off again. Saturn return. Does anybody know what a Saturn return is? Ish. Okay, so if you like astrology, great. Listen up. If you're not into it, this is a very fun fiction story for you. So Saturn return is it's within this as well. Like usually about every 30 years, the planets align in the same position that when you were born. And it's usually like we build up all these systems of beliefs and conditioning to get us further and further away from ourselves. And the planets align, and you either decide to continue how you've been going, you decide to shift it and delayer, or you change something and create something new. And I'm hoping that, in the next 30 years, I'm gonna continue on this path of self-discovery and journeying, so that I don't have to do 30 years of work in that moment, that this is a slower process and I'm doing it, versus having the last 30 years, which I just went through in my Saturn return, be the big lesson of life, But what's cool is, my mom's almost 30 years older than me, and so my activation actually activated hers. And she's been going through her healing journey too. And we're so similar, it's wild. I mean, talk about genetics. Whoa. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, thank you guys so much. This has been such an incredible conversation, and
Thank you for coming to Austin. Oh my gosh, we're so happy. Thank you for being the mayor and being here today, and Hannah and Ellen and all of you. It really means so much. I mean, talk about wounds. I still have that feeling like, is anybody going to show up? So thank you so much for showing up.
Austin loves you.
That is for sure. Thank you. So thank you for showing up, and I hope you enjoy this book and it touches you. Yeah.
so Julianne's gonna close us out with a meditation, and she's gonna be signing books afterwards. So let's give our wonderful panelists a round of applause, and then I'll hand it over to her.
Thank you all so much. I gotta head out. Sorry, guys. I got a back to school situation.
All right, so if you are all open to this is one of the things that B, does in the book and helps Lexi. She kind of Mr. Miyagi's her with meditation and focusing on the fire and stuff. And with Kinergy, we do these elemental meditations where you can just visualize. And so we're gonna do a very, very, very basic one, but it's just to allow us to get out of our head connect to our body and connect to the inner wisdom of the elements. So if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes, or if you don't feel comfortable with that, you can just do a soft gaze down. Maybe uncross your legs and put your feet, solid into the floor. And when you're ready, just take a nice deep inhale through your nose and exhale through the mouth. We're going to do another deep inhale through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. On this last one, breathing in through the nose, taking a deep, 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 filling up your belly, filling up your lungs. Maybe an extra little sip of air, and then an exhale with some sound. And as you now just are sitting in your seat, your feet placed on the ground, I want you to visualize, almost like you're a little kid with your imagination activated. Imagine that there is this like liquid honey above your head, and it just starts pouring down onto the top of your head, and it starts making its way down your forehead, around the back of your head, down the back of your neck, wrapping around your face, all the way down the front of your throat and your neck. And imagining that all of this energy from the last week or something that was going on today or whatever anxiety is just starting to attach to this liquid honey-like substance away from your body and into this honey as it starts to go down through your shoulders, around your chest, in the back of your spine, wrapping around your heart. And if you feel your heart speeding up or any kind of anxiety, just allow that honey to just pull that energy out. And taking nice deep inhales and exhales as the honey starts to drip even further down your chest into your belly, wrapping around your rib cage and your spine, even further down below your belly button into your hips, wrapping around that sacral area in your coccyx, around down into your hamstrings and your thighs and your legs, just dripping like ooze, all of that energy that is just either yours or other people's energy, what we're seeing in the news, what's on Twitter and on Instagram and TikTok, just any excess information is just being attached to this golden honey-like substance going down your kneecaps, down your shins, wrapping around your calves and your ankles, going right around the tops of your feet and visualizing, really activating that imagination. And it wraps around your feet to meet the center soles of your feet. And taking a deep inhale, imagine now there are roots coming out of the soles of your feet and starting to carve their way down into the earth. And as they go down into the earth, they start creating these pathways. And activate your senses. What does it look like? What does it taste like? What does it smell like? What does it sound like? Is it more muddy? Is it like sand? Is there concrete? Get as wild in your imagination as you can. And as you start to grow those roots down and through the earth, you're now going to reach the center of the earth. You're at the core, where there's now this liquid magma, maybe even a flame of fire. What color is it? Is it orange? Is it red? Is it that blue flame? And allow that fire to start radiating up through the earth, through those roots, activating that imagination of that earth and that fire it might spark whatever that energy is that you're visualizing coming through those roots and into the bottom of your feet. As they start to rise, it could be the heat coming through your ankles and your calves and up through your shins into your knees, up through your thighs and the backs of your hamstrings, through your glutes and your hips, and letting it rest in the area between your pubic bone and your belly button, like that sacral area right there. And just feeling the heat all throughout your legs into your hips. And just recognizing, like, what is the energy that I feel in this moment right now? And now just imagine rolling your eyes back and you just land in a body of water. You could be laying on your back in an ocean, in a lake, could even be in a bathtub. Whatever the water is for you that allows you to escape into this beautiful, nurturing, held body of water where you're just floating on your back, feeling the water encompassing you internally and externally, wrapping around your heart. And then we're going to connect to the energy of air and feeling that breeze on your cheek. Maybe even lifting up your arms. This can be visual, it can be physical, whatever you want to do, where you feel the air as if you were on a mountaintop and raising your hands up and flying like a bird, or even if your hand was out of a window in a car and you feel that beautiful energy of that air just radiating through your skin. Is it cold? Is it dense? Is it hot air? Just really activating that imagination and visualizing where you are with this air. And the last thing we're going to visualize is now just picture the sun or some bright golden beautiful light above you, starting to pour down through the top of your head like a column of light, going right through your head, through your body, and piercing down out of your body into the earth as this beautiful column of golden light. Just feeling all of the elements, the water, the air, the fire, the earth, and just asking yourself a question right now, over and over on repeat in your head. How can I trust myself even more in this moment? How can I trust myself even more? And just ask yourself that on repeat in your head. How can I trust myself even more? How can I trust myself even more? And allow just the space of whatever is coming up for you. And just trust that that's the answer. And before we open our eyes, maybe just rub your hands together, creating some friction. Like hard enough to where it starts to get a little hot. And then maybe placing your hands just over your eyes and gently opening your eyes underneath your hands so that it's not too bright. And then when you get a chance, just dropping your palms and maybe making eye contact with people around you if you feel comfortable. And if you notice, there's just this little grin, this little sense of peace, and this eye connection that you're making with people where there's just a calm sense. Do you feel that? So that didn't even take 5 minutes, and there was like the entire energy of like fun, entertainment just like dropped in, and we all just connected to like the beauty and the magic of our body, right? And now we're like our body has regulated, the energy is not so charged. And I'm just curious if you connected to a single element more than the others, if something like came about, or when we asked that question, how can I trust myself even more, if something came up. And this was, like I said, a very quick version of this, but if something came up that anybody wants to share, please feel free to raise your hand and share, but also no need. But it's very, like I said, the quiz here will show you what the elements are that are very strong, and I don't know if, again, like for me, water, I'm like, I could have been in water forever. Like that felt so good. Sometimes fire makes me a little anxious because it can feel like a little dangerous, you know, or it could just feel really warm. So I'm just curious, and for you to maybe ask yourself like, ooh, I wonder why I was feeling that versus this. And our body doesn't lie. Our body holds so much information. And if you can actually surrender your mind to your body like that, your body will tell you anything and everything that it needs. So I hope you enjoyed that. And we're going to start signing now. But again, if anybody has anything they want to say, feel free to share. Yes.
I resonated most with the water part too. I could have been there forever.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just curious, like, what do all those different elements mean?
So that it's in the quiz.
Okay.
So, and it's in the book too, but it's in the quiz, and it'll help you identify what the strengths and the weaknesses are for each one, and then it will show you how to cultivate it in like your constitution.
Fun.
Yeah, but the water is like nurturing. It is like being held. It's very womb-like. It's very motherly. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be kind of similar to that. I feel like just in general, like it's very relatable because I read the book in like 24 hours.
You did. You read it already.
Yeah. But also I feel like a lot of people, sorry, I'm kind of nervous.
That's okay.
A lot of people show themselves as fire, like I feel like I do, but then feeling really relaxed in the water is what you feel the most comfortable in, because a lot of people don't let themselves feel that way. But this book is like so like.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing, and you literally nailed it. Like that is so what this book is about, is that we show the thing that either we think we need to be, or the thing that like has got us so far. And like you are so beautiful right now sharing your emotion, and the fact that you connected to the water probably allowed you to feel that emotion, you know? And like sometimes we suppress our emotions so much that we can't even connect to that. So I just want to commend you for being so courageous and sharing that. It's really beautiful. That's awesome. Mm-hmm.